Right in the boat.
Yeah.
MAIER.
Yeah.
No, that part I didn't have correct.
Okay, I'll fix it up.
I'll fix it. I'll bring it back down.
That'd be cool.
I can get his signature
I think
anywhere.
this would be the right way, yeah.
Usually it's hard.
Okay, let's call the Winters Planning Commission meeting of March 26th to order. Gaga, would you do the roll call?
Commissioner Adams?
Here.
Baker? Samirano? Here. Contreras?
Here.
Schrupp?
Here.
Riley?
Here.
Chairperson Meyer?
Here. Ramon, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, time for citizen input on anything that is not on the agenda. Do we have anybody that would like to say anything? Do you like to say something, Wade, or you just wait?
I'm just waiting for that.
Yeah. Ignore her. Seeing none, we will move on to consent items, which would be the minutes. Any comments on the minutes?
Move the approval.
Do we have a second? We have a second with Ramon. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? It passes. Staff commission reports. Anybody got anything? Well, I have something, because I went to a city council meeting on March 19th to see our vice chair, Lisa Baker, receive the Women of Persistence Award by Women's Caucus and the State Assembly. And it was quite an event, and congratulations to you on that.
Thank you very much. A completely undeserved honor, but gratefully accepted.
As it was pointed out, persistence is another word for, a fancy word for stubborn. So, and we had cake, so it was great.
That was the reason it all came.
I'll go anywhere. The discussion items. Dave Doswell.
Yes, sir. So the item before you right now is a parcel map to take, not sure if it's one or two lots. It's two parcel numbers, but I won't bore everybody, but the assessor can put as many parcel numbers as he or she wants. It doesn't mean it's a lot. Into three parcels, that part I am sure of. There are two smaller parcels that will basically encompass the existing houses. One at 101 and the other at 102 3rd Street. We'll also pick up their garages. And then the third, much larger parcel, which is the one Mr. Mariani is looking to purchase, is sort of a backwards J, I guess would be the way I describe it on the map that you see there. It includes a fair portion of the property adjacent to the creek. It's general plan and zoned open space, but there's ample room for him to build a house. And in fact, I looked on the FEMA flood maps, and if you get above the area where it says top of bank, which is where he's looking to build a house, he actually is outside of their flood zone, which will save him some grief having to deal with FEMA. A little interesting history when Lagnar Mickle first started working on this. Brian Benino, who took the lead on it, was perplexed by the fact that there's a garage at the end of 3rd Street that's on a portion of what was once the city right of way. I mentioned that to the applicant. Chris was here, and lo and behold, Mr. Pierce, who's the property owner, his father in 1974 had a resolution from the city to abandon that right of way. Also, he deeded over a couple of easements to the city, one which actually goes under the garage for storm drainage, and one that runs along the side of the garage. Here's what happened: is it never was completely finalized. Got all the signatures and everything like that, but it never actually got done where the property transferred over from the city to Mr. Pierce. Thus, the reason why the city, the engineer was a little bit perplexed. We're gonna get that cleared up. It's sort of an independent thing that needs to happen, but because history tends to need to be fixed once in a while to make it right, we're gonna get it done. So you won't have to worry about somebody down the road saying, how come your garage sitting on city right away? But other than that, it's real straightforward. It meets all of our zoning, general plan requirements as to lot size. And it's obviously the appropriate use of the property. I believe Mr. Marion, were to speak, will tell you that he plans on planting orchard, some sort of fruit orchard, I believe, on the property in the meantime. And then when he comes forward with his actual home, that will actually be a public hearing as well. And so the property owners will be notified for that hearing. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Okay. Questions, commissioners? Is the large parcel zoned OS open space?
Part of it is, it's R1 and open space.
Okay, so, can you build on OS?
You actually can build on OS,
Okay.
except that this would be in the floodplain, and it would be, in our ordinance, it requires the 50-foot setback from the creek to be inside that 50-foot setback. So you need some sort of variance to build within that area, but technically, if it was flat and wasn't adjacent to the creek, you actually can put a single-family house.
Okay.
on open space.
And one lot can have two different zonings?
It can. It's not ideal, but yes, it can.
Okay.
It's actually got two different general plan designations. I believe it only has one zoning.
Okay. And that zoning's OS?
Actually, it shows it as OS as well, so it does have two. Because that's the zoning map.
Yeah.
I usually focus on the general plan map when I'm looking at it.
Okay. Why don't we open it to a public hearing at 6:36? Public comments? And seeing none at 6:36, we will close the public comments. Any other questions? Anything anybody wants to say, ask, or ask of the applicant?
Did you interview that?
Sure, let's hear from the applicant.
Oh, I had nothing prepared, but
Okay.
I simply say, thank you very much to Dave, who's been nothing but,
Your name and
Oh,
where
hi.
you live for the record.
good evening, Christopher Marion.
Okay.
And thank you very much for having us here today. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Purse as well. My wife and I, Rachel, are purchasing part of the land that the Purses have held in their family since the 40s. And we feel honored to be able to be the next stewards of the property. And our plan is to, well, actually, lots happened last week, but we just hot off the press, we found out that my wife is pregnant with our fourth. And so things, tend to change a little bit when all these kids start. So that's why we have a 5-year-old, 2-year-old, 1-year-old, and then one on the way. So the house that we're going to build is definitely down the road. Probably 2 or 3
And it's going to
years.
be bigger.
It's going to be bigger now. Yeah, we're going to forward to 95 bedrooms, but and immediately we want to plant it back into ag. So our family's in the prune business. We're thinking either prunes or some kind of a wine grape based on what we'll be able to grow there. So that's going to be our, as soon as we close, we're going to do some deep ripping and some planting. And that's really our plan. And yeah, thank you very much to John. Everyone's been very accommodating, and it's been a very great process. So anything we can do, I know there's a little bit more work to do on the abandonment side of it. And so thank you to Mr. Purse, has kept amazing records over time, and we've got basically all the records other than the actual wet signatures. So we'll hopefully help provide all that and work to be part of the solution. So thank you again for having us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It's actually a very simple technical correction. The resolution abandoning the piece of Third Street was recorded, but the actual abandonment was not recorded. So we just need to catch up on that.
Okay.
Not a problem. And matter of fact, we actually do have the originals of all of these documents. So we will. It's time for Tracy to go.
Take on the wood.
1874.
It was a good year. Was. Okay.
Well, with that, I'd happily move the staff recommendation.
Okay, do we have a second on the staff recommendation?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor of the staff recommendation, say aye. All opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and congratulations on everything.
Thank you.
Okay, Dave.
So there's a couple ways to approach this. One item at a time as far as responses to comments that were made at the last meeting, or collectively. This would be our third meeting, starting back last July. We had the first workshop, and we had a second one earlier this year. And that-
We are going to have, Dave Adams will recuse himself from this issue.
Yes.
Thank you.
Apologize. Get there. And I listened to the audio from the meeting. Yeah.
Yep.
And there are a number of items which I mentioned in the staff reports, so you can go over them individually. There's still some things that are left in my mind open that I would like to have more direction on. One of the things which Dave mentioned at the last meeting before he had to recuse himself tonight was, should there be a minimum on the number of days before somebody would have to go through this process throughout a dozen days? Of the two ordinances that I'm most familiar with, Sacramento and Napa, there was no minimum. So if you rented out your house as a vacation rental for a single day, you theoretically had to go through the process. As I mentioned previously, and I mentioned again, do you want to put a cap as to how many days? The City of Sacramento does have a cap of 6 months on hosted and 90 days on non-hosted. As we're headed now towards a use permit process for non-hosted, you could as part of that process, establish a number of days as part of the use permit. So I don't know that non-hosted needs to have a cap, a max, but maybe 6 months for hosted would be a seemingly good number for a maximum number of days that you could conceivably rent your facility. So that's a question that I'm looking still for some guidance on. 10 persons was discussed as a max, 2 per bedroom, which Lisa mentioned is a HUD standard. That seems to be, well, NAPA has it, it seems to be somewhat of the norm, but if you don't have just an unlimited number in case of some properties that may have the capability to go above 10. We talked about who could make the decision to approve. I think both would be public hearings. One would be at a staff level for the hosted facilities, and we'll hopefully establish a fee based on the time that the city has to invest in getting that process, versus a non-hosted facility, which would be resting with the planning commission. And I would have the authority, or this position would have the authority to bump up hosted facilities to the planning commission if I felt that it was somewhat of an odd situation. And again, the one that we've been talking about quite a bit is a hosted facility, and yet it has the capability of creating a lot of issues that a normal hosted facility would not. So those are kind of the things that I focused on in the staff report.
Do you want to go through them just kind of one at a time and get input from?
I think so at this point.
Okay.
We could skip around, but
Well, we can go through all of them and then have any public.
yeah, and then anything that maybe I overlooked.
Okay.
So the first one is the cap on the number of days, and then a minimum number of days before you go through this process.
I don't think there should be, I think a minimum number of days is 1 day, because it's too easy to say, if you say, if you increase that, then somebody can just say, well, I'm below that, no matter what. If you say 10 days or 15 days or something like that would be the minimum. You just say, well, I've always been at 12 days, so I don't have to, do any of this.
Yeah, it should be more black and white. I mean, and I think we'll get there, at least my opinion, as we get to some of these other points. We don't want to create a situation that deters people from doing a little bit of this. But if they're doing this, they need a permit.
And they do have to have a business license. The trigger point in a business license is if the revenue is over $1,000, which would be a half a dozen, maybe 10 times before you get to that, depending on whether you're renting a room or the whole house.
Yeah.
So you're gonna need a business license regardless of what the commission were to establish. They established a minimum number of days. And of course, obviously, if you go to an unlimited number of days in a year, that becomes a separate issue on its own.
I guess from my perspective, when we're talking about folks having guests in their homes for property that we rent, which isn't necessarily analogous, but essentially, if it's below 10 days, then it doesn't mean anything to our insurance. But once that family member actually bumps up over 10 days, then there's actually an insurance cost to that. So I would hate for folks to actually get into a situation where they think their regular homeowner's insurance might be sufficient to cover them if they're doing a rental. And I'm not sure exactly where the city's role falls in that, but there is some nexus there, at which point they're going to need to know that with a business license and a certain number of days that, just their residential insurance isn't going to be sufficient to run that business.
Right. I don't think we normally get involved in that situation, although I think as part of the process, you clearly could indicate that.
Sort of an educational process.
Yeah, that the potential person that's doing this might want to check with their insurance before they get into it too far. Because once theoretically we've gone through the hearing process, I can't refund them their money.
Right.
You can find out that your insurance is going to double or something silly like that.
Or the carrier won't insure them and they
At all.
need to get commercial, which is
Right.
expensive.
But this might be something that can, a simple phone call to Airbnb, for example, they might have, because presumably there aren't hundreds of thousands of Airbnb renters without insurance at the moment. And
Right.
if there is, that might be a cause for concern, but I would say it's probably just a matter of seeing how the industry takes care of it on its own, as opposed to us enforcing.
Yeah, I would think that there's probably some contract obligation that the Airbnb puts them through to ensure that there's insurance so they don't go after Airbnb.
So, question, you said, if you have guests for more than 10 days, were you talking about paid guests or if somebody comes to visit you for more than 10 days?
Oh, that's for visiting, and that's for our commercial policy. So you have to tell us, so in my day job, right? If you're gonna have guests that are gonna be there beyond 10 days, they actually have to report that because
You're talking about in your job.
Mhm.
Yes.
that there's an insurance component to that. And then if they're staying longer than 30, then they're often considered to be more like residents, whether that's a permanent or temporary resident. So, I mean, there are some existing standards. I don't know that necessarily equates to whether or not there should be a minimum, but there's some sort of industry standards to think about.
Yeah, well, 30 is the transient, the number that's used by
Well,
every city.
Yeah, I don't think a standard homeowner's policy asks you how many people live there.
No, it wouldn't. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
Other than the fact that you're contracting with like Airbnb or VRBO. But I think, as Greg suggested, maybe calling Airbnb and just finding out what do they require may make it a moot point. Because if you're going through one of those sites and they all say you have to prove that your homeowner's insurance will cover what you're trying to do, then why do we need to duplicate it?
Right.
But if they also say you have to do it from day one, it sort of feeds to the no minimum
Oh, I see.
standard.
Okay, now I'm following.
And
I knew I'd catch on eventually where you were headed with that. Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
if we have some number other than one, then you have to catch them, and then you have to prove that they're actually doing it more than 10 days. And, there's no reason for the staff to be involved in.
I mean, it's
Complex.
any ordinance in a small city is hard to
Yeah.
implement. When you start throwing in a lot of sort of variables, it gets into parts even more difficult.
I did want to voice my opposition to setting a maximum number of rentals at this point. Presumably, everything we're doing is to mitigate any sort of issues that would come about because of these homes. And so it'd be a little bit redundant to then implement a maximum days, a cap on the rentals. So
And as I've mentioned, Napa doesn't, Sacramento does, and I suspect if I found 6 other cities that had ordinances, you probably might vote. So it's just really what's the commission's recommendation to the council as to the preference.
Yeah, I would agree with not putting a max on it. The ones I've been watching promote them all the time, and the one near me, and people come and go, but there's not somebody there all the time.
Right.
A lot more in the summer than.
Right. Okay, so
It kind of
getting
limits itself.
a consensus that we don't put it as a max and find out about the insurance as to maybe a min or just no min anyhow, and just find out about the insurance for our own.
I think your consensus was no minimum, but I would like to
Know what the
know what
answer
the
is.
insurance answer is.
And that's something I can bring back to the next meeting, which I'm planning at this point to bring you an ordinance that you can vote on to take to the city council.
I think, Dave, that we do need a cap. I don't know what that number is. And I don't know how you police that, but, conceivably somebody could rent a place out 365 days out of the year with 10 people in this house that normally would have a family living in it. It's a possibility. It's not likely to happen. But
I think
I just don't know, what the current situation is in winters, and whether or not I could even get an answer as to the typical number of days that.
We're not
places-
talking.
And I think
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet, yeah.
that this was discussed before, and we sort of wanted to keep the door open to a reconsideration if it became an issue. So I could see a no cap with some kind of reconsideration.
And I think with this kind of an ordinance, it will be a little bit of a thing that we will have to come back at some point and adjust based on, what happens and once the ordinance is in place. I suspect other cities, I know Napa did,
Yeah,
because if you look at their ordinance, they have the before 2009 and the after 2009. So even they've been, a work in progress. Okay, so that, I think, although I know, Pat, you're dissenting on it, I think there's a consensus that right now there'd be no cap and no minimum. At least in your case, the no minimum seems to be fine. But because you said one day, we should trigger it.
Yeah.
But you're sort of on the other side as to with the cap. So as I said, the other thing was public hearing. I'm not sure mine would be a 300-foot notice. I'm leaning towards drafting something that would be more like a home occupation, which is 100 feet or immediately adjacent, something less cumbersome. And so that would mean that the process is simpler. Obviously, if the meeting takes place during the day while I'm here on Thursday, let's say, that simplifies the process. We would have to go back to our consultant and come up with a fee. I don't think it would be as high as Napa's, but it could be because it's a public hearing. And you have to notice that in the paper, and then you also have to, even if it's just 100 feet, you've got to send 8, 10, 12 notices out.
That's
the neighbors.
for non-hosted. you're talking.
For hosted. Non-hosted would be the use permit process. So that's already spelled out. It's $300. There's a fixed fee that we've already established. That's what they're gonna have to pay. The benefit of a use permit, if there is any, to a potential person is it runs with the land. And so theoretically, if that property owner were to sell, somebody else could pick up that use permit and continue to do a similar thing in the property. And would likely, even with the administrative version of the hosted permit, would probably run with the land as well. So,
It just seemed like the non-hosted is the one that's typically would be a source of more problems.
And that's the one that would go through the use permit.
That has to come to planning.
Yeah, that would have to
Yeah.
come to you.
Yeah.
That would have to come to you
And
and
that's the 1,800 and whatever
18,
dollars.
20 or
You
something
gotta be
like that.
serious.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And just that alone will probably trigger you to do a certain amount of cases in the year anyhow, just to recoup the money that you have to invest for a business license and insurance and whatever else you have to pay.
And I think I agree with the 100-foot or adjacent properties, because that's usually effective.
So that's still to be drafted, but that's the thinking I've got right now.
I like the idea of streamlining it. Planning commission, I don't think should be usurped to just process posted facility permits. So I do like the bifurcation and taking the ones that you either think would be problematic or the ones that would have no host and making that a public process, I think is a good thing.
Of the two, neither, shouldn't say that Sacramento is not. If you look at Sacramento's ordinance, it's done at a staff level, probably because the city's enormous. Napa, it's a use permit process for a lot of their stuff. So that's where I sort of got the idea of the use permit is following the lead of Napa, which again, is still a much bigger city, but a little closer to.
And that's what the use permit is ongoing. That's a one-time.
It's a one-time, you only pay it once, as long as you continue to operate it in that location. You're only renewing your business license, so you go through a lot at first, but then you establish it.
Yeah.
You're good to go.
And a daytime hearing like you would hold with hosted, a daytime hearing if you also did a non-hosted would actually preclude a lot of people who might want to come and be present at it compared to a planning commission, which is an evening.
I mean, a lot of zoning administrators that I'm familiar with, just technically what this would be called, it's done during the day because obviously you have to be here at night and throw in all the other costs that is factored into the consultant's estimate as to what the city should be charging as a fee. So I'm trying to make it as simplified as possible, but not exclude the public entirely from the process.
I have two, I guess, questions. Both of them are kind of walk us through how this would work. So we have a potential hosted Airbnb. They file the applications, pay the fee, come in, you've given the 100-foot notice, you've published it in the newspaper, and let's say the neighbors do show up. And all of a sudden it's something about it's controversial. You can then decide to elevate it to us, or at that
Right.
point is it stuck down?
No, it can be elevated to you. And I would look at it this way. Let's say non-hosted is $500. I mean, hosted is $500 to and we know it's 1820. I would probably tell them that they would have to pay the difference. So they would have to pay the difference between 1,800 and subtracting the lesser fee. So that we wouldn't nail them twice for a fee. And I mean, of course, the alternative is to act on it and then let a resident appeal, which I don't think is a good way to do it, because then you're making it more difficult than it needs to be.
And then my other question was walking through the non-hosted process. So if you do have a hearing, it's controversial. What are the reasons that the neighbors could propose to us that would give us the ability to reconsider granting that permit?
Well, I think we'll find out, obviously, because we do have one that I suspect is going to draw some attention once the notices go out, and we will probably have to, go through it to see. But presumably, if that person, now aware that they must do this, follows all the rules, I think it'd be hard for the planning commission to say, you were trouble before, you were a bad student before, but now, we're going to give you at least a chance to do it by the rules.
Well, if they follow the proposed rules, it's a very different operation than what is going on.
Correct. So that's my thinking, is that, but there may be other things that we don't know about, that we haven't heard about, but I would be surprised as to what that is. Pat would probably know more. I got a call from a woman who lives in the neighborhood near Pat. And apologize, I've forgotten her name, but I think Pat would know who she is. And, you know, she just goes, this is ridiculous. You know, this thing is like I'm living next to a hotel, you know, and nobody told me that they were going to be allowed to have a hotel there. Did I get a hearing notice? I go, no, you really haven't, because we're sort of in the in-between process.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is what role the commission would have on that day, aside from saying yes or no, right? Because in order to say no, we have to have some rationale behind it, and it's not
It would
clear to
be
me
tough.
what those
It would be tough.
circumstances would be.
It would be tough. Because once they agree to all the stipulations, it seems to me you would have a difficult time staying right from the get-go. No, you could qualify it. You could say, you know, we're gonna review this in a year. You know, say we're gonna review this in 6 months to see how is this working. You know, is this person playing by the rules, or was this just, you know, a charade, and now they're back to doing it the way they were?
But as part of the conditional use, the use permit that we're providing, we could increase or decrease conditions. So that would be the.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I'm just saying, if all we're doing is saying yes or no,
No, no.
and all they have to do is present their case,
No, no.
then we might as well leave it at your.
Yeah, and you could add conditions, that would be the intent,
Okay.
to maybe address some of the concerns that we hear at the public hearing that may not have been brought up in the staff report.
Thank you.
I think once you've already doing this and created problems, it's a lot harder to I mean, it makes it a different situation if somebody came in, you know, from the get-go, they hadn't done it before, and, you know, they say a lot of stuff and everything. It's just, you don't have that bad taste in your mouth there to start with.
You didn't mention on definitions, are you,
So I'm not positive, you
Are you looking
mentioned
at-
something about the definitions, and I gave you the definitions that I plagiarized from NAPA. And I didn't know if there was something missing there,
Well,
because we do define, or they do define hosted and non-hosted. I didn't know what else we could do to further define.
okay,
distinguish
where,
the two.
I very often read things too fast. What did, I don't see where, my recollection was Napa's used a definition of no more than 2 bedrooms in a hosted.
Which is here.
Where does it say that?
So under hosted, it says, and no more than 2 bedrooms are rented for transient occupants pursuant to this section. And then the non, it's at the top of page 2 on the draft. On the
Okay,
draft
I
ordinance.
was looking over here.
Attachment C, top of page 2, which is the rough draft of the ordinance.
But it also says only 2 people per bedroom, right?
Right, and
So
that's
only-
also,
That's only
and that's,
4.
and that's actually also, but again, this is hosted.
That's hosted.
Yeah.
Okay.
The theory being that the host is living in one of the bedrooms, you have some finite number of bedrooms that you want them to be using.
Okay.
I mean, we can change that. We
No,
can say
that-
3.
No, I just wanted to make sure, I was looking at this summary page, I wasn't looking at the detail, might be my problem there.
Is that the intent to use these definitions? I thought these were just examples.
Well, that's the intent.
Okay.
If there's a better one or if we want to tweak what's there, that's fine. But I went through their definitions, and where we had a similar definition for one of the terms that they used, I used ours, or I referenced ours. So in other words, we already have a definition for one of the words that they're using. I'm not going to use theirs, we'll use ours. But then when we didn't, which is most of the ones we didn't, I used NAPA's verbatim.
So I would have one definitional change on bedroom,
Okay,
because you want a method of egress in case of fire or emergency. So the way you've written it doesn't mean there's a bedroom, there's a window or a door.
but they have to, so in the body of this, you have to go through a building inspection of the rooms that you're going to use for habitation.
Sure.
And so this is really just to say, how do you distinguish a hosted versus a non-hosted by definition?
Well, here you're saying it can't have a window to the interior, but it doesn't actually specify that you've got egress. So
Under the definition?
Yeah.
Usually,
any habitable room,
yeah,
no less than 7 feet,
right.
and no closet, enlarged entryway without door, no windows open to the exterior, but otherwise any den, study, or other room shall be considered a bedroom. And that is actually not the case. A den doesn't have to have a window or egress.
I'm lost where you're looking. You're looking just like-
Attachment, see number, page 1.
Yeah.
Bedroom definition.
Oh, okay, no, I'm fine with it.
So I would hate someone to be able to say, here in your definitional element, you've got a misconnection between what building would consider a habitable legal bedroom
Okay.
and what your definitional element is.
Well, I'll work with Jean on what's the appropriate definition.
That would be great.
Does, do all bedrooms have to have that in just
You have to have it.
a permitted house?
Well, any house, you're supposed
Yeah.
to have a means of egress. The only
Yeah.
thing that's changed over time is the height of the windowsill.
Yeah, because it says you have to comply with all state, county,
Correct,
et cetera,
Correct.
rules and regulations.
right. And codes do change.
Okay.
The egress one has been pretty standard probably for the last 20 years, maybe longer. But I can make sure that this definition again, which I took from that, is consistent with building code as to how it should read.
I'd like to go back to the hosted bedroom requirement.
Right.
I, for one, do not agree that we should set a limit on that. Again, because presumably all of these rules that we're implementing is to mitigate some sort of harm or, experience that the neighbors are having. And it seems to me that in our discussions over the past few sessions, the idea was the whole purpose of giving the incentive to have a hosted versus non-hosted was that if the owner is there, they're responsible, it changes the dynamics of the home. And I don't think that goes away whether you increase or decrease the amount of people staying there. So I vote for not setting a limit as long as provided that the person is sleeping there.
But we do have a cap, no more than 10 people that can be in the facility, regardless of whether it's hosted or not hosted.
Yeah, I'm talking about the bedroom. You can't rent out more than 2 bedrooms. Right, I wouldn't disagree with that.
If I limit it to 2 bedrooms, though, it by definition, it reduces issues like parking, noise, because it limits the number of people. I mean, it makes it a lesser,
But I'm not sure how you get to 10 persons per,
that's in a hosted, and a non-hosted,
The non-hosted and
has a
hosted,
maximum.
there's a 10 maximum.
So
The
you're-
hosted is obviously less because you only allow 2 bedrooms. And
so
since
you're
there's 2 people per
penalizing
bedroom.
the hosted facility over the non-hosted, if I'm understanding it correctly.
I guess the question would be to ask, within the permit is, because I get what they're saying as far as the overall bedrooms.
Well, I mean, if you have a 5-bedroom or 6-bedroom house and it's hosted, should you be allowed to rent out all the other 5 bedrooms?
And because I'm so into parking, I think one of the things that, as far as the permit, if somebody came in, let's say a 6-bedroom house, I think being able to demonstrate, some parking or something like that would allow them to go above the 2-bedroom limit.
And there is language in here talking about the ability to provide parking for the number of guests that you're hosting in the facility. And there are probably examples where you could park 8 cars on the property of a 5-bedroom house and do so easily. But you can also look at a house that's out there by Paul and realize that there's no way you can accommodate that number of cars because it's a standard tract single-family home that wasn't built that way.
Right, but presumably you could be limited in parking if there's only 2 cars there, depending on where the home is, right? I mean, maybe one way to do this is to address this on a case-by-case basis, either for the hosted, at your level, you would look to the area where this is and what sort of parking is available and address it that way, but I wouldn't,
Because there is language about parking, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you back into a number.
Yep.
Rather than establish a number.
Because basically what you said in here, I think, was that it can be assumed that each person would have their own car. So if you have 6 people there, that it could be 6 additional cars.
So I know, both in the definition and then on page 7, where it talks about hosted facilities, there's a reference to 2 bedrooms as a maximum number. So again, looking for a consensus as to whether or not, maybe use some other criteria as the way to establish the max parking you want, off-street parking.
Oh, yeah, I like backing into the parking number. I just don't, I mean, I think you have to decide what, so having listened to many discussions from everyone, it seems you want to have hosted facilities because you believe it will mitigate, but you're now saying non-hosted can do 10 and hosted can do like 4. And so you are disadvantaging the thing that you think you want to advantage. And so I don't understand, there seems to be a disconnect there between what we're trying to incentivize and what we're actually proposing to write.
And again, I'm fine with putting the same cap of 10 on both. And again, using parking in the case of hosted to back into a number as to how many they could actually have.
So you would individually then on a staff level back into a hosted.
Right,
So
right.
somebody might come in and they might end up being approved for 3 bedrooms and then you might be approved for 4, somebody else for 2. And if they disagree with you, they can come to the planning
You can
commission.
always come to the planning.
Okay,
And I would have some sort of criteria that the parking would have to be off-street,
Yeah.
not on-street.
I think that is a much, yeah.
Preferred way to
Yeah.
approach it. Okay, well, that's fine with me.
Good.
So, 10-person bedrooms should be determined by parking.
and I don't think this might not fly with the rest of the commissioners, but I'm also not in favor of the 10-person max, but I think consensus with you guys was that you are, but I think that we should start, everything we do should be incremental. Again, you identify the problem and then you build upon that, this idea that we're gonna go solve all of these issues, which may or may not be present in each and every case. Again, if you have a 2-bedroom home, obviously we wouldn't say that you would then be able to have 10 people automatically. So we should look at the unique characteristics of the individual unit. But I know.
a 2-bedroom home can't have 2 because you can only have 2 people per bedroom. So the home's the limit. The maximum, and that's where really taking a draw from Napa, who's wrestled with this for a long time. And obviously has a bigger draw for this type of, for short-term rental. And recognizes the potential problems and that one way to control the potential problems is to put that cap.
Once you go beyond 10, then you get 12, 14, 16 people. Now you got a party.
And that's what we have.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Well, and you,
all things aside, there are other things going on at that particular facility that are, adding to the problem.
Right.
But you have 16 people there. That's the potential to generate a fair amount of noise in the summertime.
Well, I guess from my perspective, thinking about it as rental property, if you will, I thought that the discussion about the fact that once you're reaching a certain size, it's more appropriate to be a B&B or another type, because it's really more of a real business model as opposed to a sort of ancillary use of property. Makes really good sense beyond 10. It also has a completely different process, and really you are talking commercial property, I think, after you get past 10. And you're also proposing that you have to limit to a single contracted use, and a property that can have more than 10 really doesn't lend itself to that. So I really do think creating a bifurcated path towards becoming a bona fide B&B or other type of inn is a much better place for more than 10.
And that ability actually exists right now. The one example that we mentioned, but I won't tonight by name, could theoretically apply to be a B&B. It could. Under the zoning, you actually could. don't know how successful it would be, but there is a process they could be going through right now, which is also a use permit, independent of this whole vacation rental thing.
And a big part of this is to preserve the residential, the
Sure.
nature of the,
Right.
of a occupied residential neighborhood. And, you know, that these need to, if they're going to be successful, they need to coexist. And you start to move past 10 and you are raising, you are really threatening the nature of that neighborhood.
Especially since there's no separation. So if, you know, 5 people right in a row want to do 10, 10,
And
10,
10, the party
the
never
ordinance,
ends.
the ordinance is not limiting how many. So you could have, you know, back to back, or, you know, side to side, whatever, be the max.
I guess just a point of clarification. If we decide not to set the limit at 10, nothing precludes us from setting that limit for each unit going
For
forward.
you, no, but for me, yes. So my theory is to make this process less cumbersome for the hosted facility. I want to establish some.
You wouldn't have that discretion?
Well, I could. I'm not saying I can't. I'm just saying that the idea was the more time I have to spend
Mhm.
issuing them a permit, going through the same sort of process we're going through tonight, the more the fee's gonna cost. Because the consultant's gonna say, okay, Dave, how long does it take you to process the average hosted facility permit? Well, if they follow these basic rules, it's a half hour, 45 minutes, let's say. If now I've got to back in the thing, do a lot more analysis, go out to the property, blah, 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 and now it's an hour and a half process. So at $150 an hour or whatever I you know, work out to be as far as a consultant, that's gonna get factored into the fee. That's how all of that stuff done is, because what's the normal average process that you have to go through? So there's the downside if you start leaving me the same sort of open-ended processes you as a commission can go through.
It was brought up at other reviews of this, that it would be unfortunate to knock out of the short-term rental business those people who just wanted to do it a little bit.
Yeah.
That would be kind of contrary to where it probably would not serve us well. And the more complicated, the more three-dimensional puzzle we make this thing, the higher the fee. And then they're out of it. And I mean, somebody could well be out there just doing 800, 900, $50 a night for a room. You can do a lot of nights, before you get over even the business license.
I looked today on the Airbnb website, and there was as little as $75 a night to $450 for the whole house.
I guess I just didn't think that those people would be the ones requesting more than 10.
But
But
they probably wouldn't be. I mean, it may be one of these things that never comes to pass. Because typically hosted means you're living there. So you're theoretically not torturing yourself by putting in so many people that you can't sleep.
and that benefits relate to the neighbors, so I think.
I mean, that's the idea.
Also, Gene brought up in another discussion here where his nephew was going into the Bay Area to do some training, and he paid $35 a night in a home in Fremont. And that was to sleep in a sleeping bag on the floor. There were 17 people on average there each night. And I mean, it worked out great for him, but I mean, it just, it's the kind of thing that destroys a neighborhood. So that's some more black and white caps. They're a simple, straightforward system, and then somebody feels they have a good reason to have a variance on that system, then they can either come to the staff or come to the planning commission to look for that variance.
And that would be allowed. And it wouldn't be as rigorous as a regular variance, right? It'd just be a matter of.
Well, that should be built into the process. That because if there's no caps on the use permit process, then in other words, you establish the cap. And the particular applicant saying, you're telling me I can only have 4 people and I've got 6 bedrooms and yada, 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 yada. I'll say, okay, do you want to pay the difference? I'll bump it up to the planning commission. We'll make this a full-blown use permit. And then you can ask for what you feel you can reasonably accommodate.
And if they want to rent out 6 bedrooms, it's probably going to work out financially for them to get a use permit and pursue a larger.
Well, then they run into the parking problem
So,
Well, that's it. I mean, there's gonna be other criteria they have to meet. The places they're staying have to be building code compliant. The rooms that they're staying in, the barn that's been converted or whatever the case may be, has to be.
In here, if I read it right, it's an annual, so like for a hosted, is that an annual permit that's renewed?
So the way I've written, and I think the version you have, I tweaked a little during the day,
Okay.
they would be subject to an annual inspection by the building department. And there would be a fee that we would establish. I don't know what that would be. It'd be a fairly minimal fee.
Okay.
Just to make sure that, they haven't blocked off an exit, they haven't put a dresser in front of the window, something silly. And that they have everything according to the building code. My review would be on an as-need basis. So let's say I've gotten some complaints. You're renting one out of your house and I've received some complaints. All right, I'm gonna probably say to you, okay, we need to talk. Here's what's happened in the last year while you've had your permit. How do we address these problems? And so that would be a may. So it could be driven really more by the circumstance.
And if there's no problems and I don't have to talk to you, is there a cost to renew the, okay. So in other words, once you get a permit, assuming you don't
You're
break
just
any
doing the business
rules,
license, you're just
life
doing the
goes
business
on.
license. Unless
Okay.
you want to change it. Now, if you want to change the parameters, then you've got to come back and pay.
Right.
But if you stay at 2 people, 2 bedrooms, and we don't have any problems, come the year that's up, I'm gonna tell you, Paul, you need to have the building inspector come out and inspect your home. Your year review is up, it's gonna cost you $75, let's say, whatever the number is. And that's all, and then you renew your business license.
So, inherent in that inspection, will they be looking at things like fire extinguishers?
Yeah.
Life safety, essentially.
Life safety. That's the only thing that worries me. And not that you would purposely try to do something, but that, in order to accommodate, I'll use my own example. In my guest bedroom, there's a bed up against the window right now with a headboard. I promise you, it makes it much more difficult to get out of that bedroom. Since my daughter's in there, I don't want to do that, but that's the only way the bed would work. So that's the kind of thing.
Yeah.
You do something in the interim that makes it so technically that's no longer up to code.
So is it proposed that all permitted people would have a business license?
They have to have a business license if they generate more than 1,000.
Okay, what if they don't generate more? What if it is one of those every once in a while, 1 bedroom?
They're gonna be telling me then that they aren't, that they're
Right.
gonna be renting it for $75 and a maximum of 6 nights a year. And so we're gonna go on that honor system.
How, and everybody with a permit has to pay taxes. What's the occupancy tax? What's the process for that?
Well, the TFT is what, 12, 13?
12%, and
Airbnb.
right now Airbnb collects.
Okay, so for all the ones that aren't done through Airbnb,
So that's the ones that will have to go out.
But that came up today,
Okay.
and I can send a note to the city attorney saying, hey, hello.
Yeah.
I think,
so they'd have to turn in a report and send a check.
Right.
but I think everybody's getting on board with that.
The hope is that the host site does that like Airbnb does.
Yeah.
So they collect the money, then they forward the money to the city. So we don't have 15 people that we have to badger to get the money. Airbnb pretty much says you're paying this up front, and then we're forwarding that cost onto the city.
Okay.
That money to the city.
And I think they're all ramping up to do that. I read in Bloomberg an article that Airbnb and VRBO and all those, they are the largest hospitality organizations in the world.
In the world, yes.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
think
like
they can
this,
handle
it's
this.
not like, "Oh, this might work."
Yeah.
No, that's here.
So are we gonna be, are we just not going to be all that concerned about anything that doesn't go through Airbnb? Or we're assuming that they're all gonna go through
No, we're
somebody?
gonna go
Yeah.
after them all.
Okay.
But they were,
Because
Airbnb was
Craigslist
like
is
800 pound gorilla. Well,
Yeah.
interestingly, again, not mentioning a particular facility.
Yeah.
It is no longer listed on Airbnb because it's probably you're now having to pay TOT. But guess where they are? VRBO.
And yeah.
Same facility. They reduced their parameters. Now it only says 10, can accommodate 10 people, because the word's gotten out.
Yeah.
And the paper probably has been read by enough people that they see that. But they're no longer on the Airbnb website.
No, that's yours. Would, John, yeah.
So they have to get a business license. Everybody that does business in counties have.
Well,
business
you have to
license.
go over $1,000 a year.
Well, in this case, I think also, they're gonna need to provide us some type of notification. Whether they're doing through Airbnb, VRBO. But let's say you have the one road that is gonna just do it through Craigslist.
Mhm.
Then they would be responsible for paying their TOT. And the best example is Abbey House across the street. They go through and they come in, they pay their own TOT. It's not as difficult as it sounds, but as part of their application, we ask that they let us know where they're doing this. And it'll be subject to audit, and also, quite frankly, if we find out that they weren't doing it per this process, then conceivably,
Lose the permit.
they could lose the permit.
And isn't Airbnb like 80% of the market or something?
They dominate.
They're the big dog.
They're the big dog. But VRBO and HomeAway, which are under the same umbrella, are the next in line.
You mentioned in here also requiring a specific date. I mean, it would seem to me that
We got, well, I should say, you suggested we not have it, and that's how I would go.
I would, to me, it should be, once the city council gets this and that something passes and it becomes the rule, that's the day.
Yeah, so we would then
and-
send out letters to all of the known.
And if everybody comes in and staff gets swamped, you can say, great, we've got your application, tell you what, let's get together in a month, and they're fine.
Right.
Or let's get together in 2 months, and they're fine until you get together with them.
And that
But the only thing that's gonna get them to react is when
it becomes.
the homework's due.
Yeah, when it becomes law.
Okay.
And then it would be obviously, if you've got people dragging their feet, then we have to go after them through another means that says, hey, we've got this ordinance on the books and you're not complying.
So I've got a question.
Okay.
So the Airbnb and VRBO, basically you're renting a place to stay. That's it. There's no food involved, there's nothing, or.
My understanding is it doesn't include that.
Bed and
I don't know.
breakfast, you get food.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect the smaller operations may in fact offer their guest food, but Airbnb, you're not paying to get food, you're paying for food.
You have to bring your own beer.
You have to bring your own beer to the party. Yep.
All right, I saw an ad for something called Booking.com, and some of those places look pretty great. I mean, they kind of went through the whole litany, and some of them look like you have to bring your own, some don't.
Other questions? We still haven't opened this up to public hearing. I don't know if we can say anything.
Yeah,
Just throw him off.
We drove them off, we wore them down.
We waited a lot. If we go a little longer, we might be nobody here.
He gets a chance to speak.
He'll have it.
Eventually.
Yeah.
We haven't jumped him on that.
Why don't we, at 7:28, open this to public comment? And seeing none.
He's just visiting.
7:28, we close it to public comment. Other questions, other comments, other direction?
I think you did a really good job bringing forward the items that we discussed before and really letting us get into the meat of the discussion. I want to thank you for that. And I think that this was a really productive session.
I think we're closer. I think close enough that I can bring you an ordinance that you can vote on next time.
Are you, I know there's been discussion with Airbnb. Will there be discussion with this agreement before we see it? I mean, are you?
So I'm
gonna
make a connection with Airbnb.
Okay.
I'm gonna reach out to them.
Yeah.
And say, look, here's
Here's
the draft, because I didn't want to give them all the beginning stuff. They show me the final product kind of thing. So once I have a draft, I'll let the person know that I will forward that to that person, and then they can have a chance to weigh in on it.
Okay.
Are you in communication with VRBO?
I am not. In fact, as far as I know, Aaron, who was lead dog on this originally, he only talked to Airbnb.
But they do collect a TOT?
I don't know that they do. I don't know that they do. My guess is they don't. Otherwise, I don't know why this person would leave the big dog's website and go to the smaller dog's website, except to avoid the fact that they would have to start paying TFT.
No, I sent this out to the city attorney. Just all these question marks pointed at the thing that they want to get on it. I'm sure.
If they're going to be under the same pressure Airbnb's under.
Yeah.
If they want to grow and want to continue, they're going to have to play by the rules.
Yeah,
It's a lot of money.
It looked like, and I didn't spend as much time on VRBO. I was just curious to see where the one site went. There's 6 or so on their site that I think are actually in our city limits. There's maybe 10, 12 that are on Airbnb that are, again, in our city limits. A lot of them reference Winters because of our zip code, and they're technically outside the city. So I can't, and we obviously don't have any jurisdiction in the county. So it's still not a large number, but it's a number that's likely to grow.
Yeah, definitely. The more things we get here, the more people want to come.
Absolutely.
Well, and at 12 or whatever percent, that adds up to serious money pretty quick.
I wanted to share with the commission that coincidentally, my real property professor, she's an administrative law judge here in California, and she was telling us that she had a case up in Chico, and they were having similar discussions as us, and there was no ordinance. So there was no way to enforce it. You know, the city's position was there's no ordinance, therefore you can't do it. The homeowner is saying there's no ordinance, therefore we can't. And so she went through that, and she sided with, I think, the homeowner.
With the homeowner.
Yeah.
So, and just kind of, again, coincidentally, that was our topic. And the other topic we're doing right now is government takings and regulatory takings, and just to put things into perspective. And I think we do a pretty good job of that. I know, especially Dave, I know you do really well when you're dealing with the homeowners. But, you know, it's always this constant balancing act. Is, you know, how much of a detriment is this, not just Airbnb, how much of a detriment is this homeowner or developer causing, and to what extent can we alleviate that? And do we go one way or the other? And so I encourage us to continue analyzing that in each and every step, is, you know, identify the issue and solve a particular issue without going over.
And this didn't even come to the city to deal with until there was an issue, until there were issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People
People going, what the?
very few ordinances are dreamt up in the, in the staff room without a problem having it created that justifies the need.
You mentioned, you were checking with the police. Were you checking on reports?
Yeah, so I did, and I have the email. It's not that many. I think it was 3 calls for service for the worst offender.
Okay.
And then the one by you was, I think, only 1 or 2.
Okay.
I know the one we're talking about, there are other people who are not happy about the situation. I guess they just don't.
Yeah, I forgot to include that in the staff report, but I did get a response from the chief.
Okay.
Asked that during the last calendar year, how many complaints did those 2?
Well, and this ordinance ultimately will give some comfort to the neighbors of these places. There's some teeth in that. It's got to be reasonable what goes on there, and they've got some recourse if it is.
And I think some people, a lot of people, just put up with stuff. You know, things happen and they just put up with it. And I don't like putting up with stuff.
Well, and it's really where you have the interface of the past with the present in your situation. So you've got a remnant farm site that clearly, when it was isolated and removed from the community more than it is today, didn't matter, right? They wanted to have 30 people over and have a huge party, big deal. But now it's adjacent to residential. It's backing up to subdivision of homes. And any more than your neighbors should be allowed to do that, should they be allowed to do it, just because they can accommodate more people. And then, as I said, if they really want to go that route, they could apply to be an Airbnb, to be a bed and breakfast, just like next door. And that property is large enough, you know, we could probably handle the parking and everything else, but it would be a
Yeah,
process.
yeah, definitely. You could park all the cars there. Get it right.
You know, to accommodate the people living or staying there. So that's, and that may be an option that actually, when we have an ordinance, I may propose to that
Yeah.
person. Look, maybe this isn't the route you should be going. If you're really gonna do this, you know, jump in both feet, maybe you ought to be a bed and breakfast.
I actually think that there's value in helping folks build capacity. It's good for the community, and that would be one place where that could happen.
Okay, well, that's it. I don't have anything else.
Okay, we will look forward to next month. A
Yeah, this will probably be the only thing on next month's agenda.
Okay.
Mr. Corbett, who left, he's got something that we're gonna probably have a early May meeting on the 14th, rather than the day after Memorial Day. And his is a subdivision.
Okay.
And I'll send you out an email to make sure you're available for the 14th,
everybody available for 14th?
May 14th, May 14th.
May 14th.
I have a final that day or the next day.
Okay.
If it's the next day, I'll be here.
Okay.
If it's not,
You'll be here, and you'll be, you will not be at your.
I won't be at the next planning commission meeting because we're gonna be in another state.
That's
So-
the 23rd, April 23rd.
Yeah, so I trust you guys will take care of it.
if this is the only issue, then why not have it on the May 14th one?
It could. I'll let me, I mean, the subdivision that's actually being proposed is fairly straightforward, so theoretically, they can be on the same agenda. Are you all available minus Dave? Obviously, he's not here on the 14th.
I'll have to look.
And again, I'll send out an email Thursday.
A concern would be, the summer is prime time for these rentals and for the parties and for the issues.
Right.
Summer's coming at us like a freight train. So if it's May 14th and then it goes to the council and then the council
Yeah, it would be,
has to hear it a couple
It
of
would be
times
till
and then
4th
there's
of July.
30 days. and
it would be
all of
well
that.
after the 4th of July that
Yeah.
you begin.
So,
So yeah, that's sort of my,
it might be worth-
sooner than later.
I for one would do it as early as possible.
Okay.
If others would.
Okay.
Who's that? Okay. John,
Couple lines. So on Friday, we're going to be releasing the Economic Development Committee's report. So just got done with all the formatting today. Looks good. Team effort on putting the thing together, but I think it'll be interesting reading for everybody. And we plan on scheduling a joint workshop between the City Council and the Planning Commission to receive that report. So heads up on that. One thing that is in the works that will give us lots of planning for years to come, and it'll just it's gonna be great. We expect that for most of the north part of the city, we're gonna have a specific plan proposal to come in. And it's gonna include quite a bit of process. The commission will play a critical role in the entire process going through things, but waiting for the applicant to bring forward their proposal. From the staff perspective, we've already started ramping up a little bit, so just heads up.
does that include annexation?
It'll include everything in colors in the general plan. Everything inside the black lines in the city limits. It'll include specifically I'll go for this entire area, which will include some of the limits that's already in the city limit. And ultimately, it would be, it would include annexation. And so far, everything that we've talked about is for the most part consistent with our general plan. The idea of putting together the specific plan, and trust me, I get it that annexation is an issue with many people, but it's within our general plan. Most of this was meant to be completed and built out 10 years ago. So the most important thing about going through this process is that it will bring predictability. The north area, when and if the annexation of the property coming in would happen. What it doesn't do, it provides no predictability. And I think the whole process for the city, the council, the planning commission, and really for the general public, it'll be a good process. And at the end of the day, people will know the direction for the city moving forward. And quite frankly, it's something that needs to be done for the overall city. And finally, so tonight's issue really kind of representative of just what's going on in the economy. The whole idea of this ordinance tonight, and by the way, wonderful job going through and really kind of chewing this thing a little bit. But think about lodging, taxis. In some places in the country, a taxi license costs hundreds of thousands of dollars.
$1 million,
Yeah.
over $1 million. It used to be in New York or San Francisco.
Yeah, to drive a cab was $1 million to get that. Cannabis.
Now worth 32,000.
Yeah, and cannabis in California, there are 485 cities and 58 counties. And everybody has something different. It's kind of a race to the bottom right now. Cannabis is, I think, turning out to be a bust. Quite frankly, the black market stuff is just trouncing the free market legal stuff. So, and then finally, I'll tell you, probably one of the biggest issues that are being dealt with in Yolo County here is, and throughout the whole state, is homelessness. How to deal with it. You look at those 4 issues, they're big issues, they're big economy issues. And they are things that, it's interesting as we're talking about this tonight and all these other things, I get way too much email. And it's interesting to see all these things just bouncing. They're there all the time. And, as we're looking to deal with it in winters, it's something that just is exploding everywhere of how to deal with things. And we just dealt with the food trucks. But then there's street vending. How does that go into everything? So,
Electric scooters are coming.
yeah,
Remember where you heard it first.
yeah,
Two people in the last few months have gotten killed on electric scooters, rental electric scooters.
but it's interesting because those bikes, the red bikes
Yeah.
and the scooters and everything are becoming, almost the norm. How people get around. 2 weeks ago, I was running the Shamrock Half Marathon in Sacramento. I couldn't believe how many people were wheeling around in those things to go and see their friends who were running in the race or whatever. And they were everywhere. And, there's so many things that draw the economics of this. Quite frankly, you look at the size of the community, well, there's a critical mass to what triggers where those types of things can come. I think Lyft or Uber or whoever is the one who's putting those scooters and bikes and all that stuff out, there becomes a threshold. And, I know one of the big things that we've been talking about is climate. And those types of things. Those really become solutions to a lot of things: connectivity, transportation, how people get around, reduction of cars, parking. All those things are really reduced. I think probably the next year, a couple of years, it's going to be really interesting. And I think a lot of that's going to happen right here. As the Planning Commission just chews through so many different issues, as whether it's looking at a specific plan or just these little individual things that are coming back. I can see cannabis probably coming back in some form. The one thing that the one portion of our problem that we haven't dealt with is residential grow. But the thing that's been actually pretty good about it is that all of our really bad actors have stopped being bad, which is hallelujah.
Did that just happen, or was there encouragement?
I think just legalization and availability, and I'm tired of pissing off my neighbors, finally got to everybody. There's one gentleman that lives over on a street that, man, he was pancaked in between 18 and 24 plants. And I went over to visit his house, and you know what? He can let me in because I can stand on the ladder to look, and it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And so, anyway, just a lot of things coming down. I genuinely appreciate everybody's service on things. We've got some of the things that Dave's working on. We're going to bring those through, but genuinely appreciate everybody's due diligence on everything. Over the years with the Planning Commission, it's always great from the staff perspective to have an engaged Planning Commission. It's meaningful. You're reading everything, you're critiquing, you're debating, and that's really important to transparency, the thoroughness of how we get through these things. So, anyway, we'll see everybody whenever Dave says that we have to do that.
I don't leave, Paul.
Okay, I'm not.
We have to adjourn, I guess, first.
Oh, and at 7:47, we adjourn, except for Paul.
I know where it is, actually.
Okay. Okay.
You know the coolest thing living here? Did you know so many people that are in so many different industries? You know what's great is when somebody that you exchange stuff with shows up and is like, you know what? They just took this out of bond. You got to try this. Yeah.
There are perks.
That's the cool. Yeah.
Exactly.
You know farmers.
Your wife? I did. I think she reached out to your brother. Did she? That's my understanding. I don't
Article, where the
Well, she said she was going to.
put out
Hear anything
100
else?
e-bike